This is exactly right. Heads up, murderinos, we've got a big announcement coming next week that you're going to want to hear first, so keep your eyes glued to your social media at all times, day and night, to be the first to find out our breaking news. And in the meantime, you can go check out our brand new merch store at myfavoritemurdermerch.com and shop all of our brand new designs and, of course, a selection of our classics. That's myfavoritemurdermerch, MERCH.com. Big things are happening, people. Bye.
I was afraid to slide down and knock the whole table over.
Take down a bunch of books.
Hi. Hi. This is so weird to be sitting this way at the bookstore that I usually am at this way at, if my face in a book, deciding if I want to.
You're more sideways?
Yeah. What I'm saying is.
Here, it's on now. Sorry.
What I'm saying is this is my bookstore and I'm really excited to be talking at it in a microphone.
Well, welcome to Skylight Books,
Thank
Georgia.
you. Thanks, guys.
Welcome, everybody. We are thrilled when Patton asked us to moderate, is a very weird word for this, but to come and kind of co-host this with them. Of course, we were thrilled. I knew Michelle, and we both were huge fans of True Crime Diary and the work that she has been doing and did for true crime and for, being an online sleuth and the East Area Rapist, ultimately Golden State Killer case. She's put in so much incredible work technically, and then to read this book, just for me, the level of writing in this book is so incredibly impressive. And it's like when I read true crime, you kind of expect a certain tone. It's mostly factual, informational, with a little bit of like color. Michelle, this book reads to me like just fine literature, and I'm just so impressed. I'm so proud of her. It's such an exciting thing that this book exists right now. So we're very proud to be a part of this. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's a thing. I feel like we're holding space for this book and this effort and this body of work that someone really dedicated their whole life to. And so it's really an honor to be here with you guys tonight to be talking about this book. So I guess, I don't know. Yeah, right? So I think now we'll bring out Patton Oswalt and Billy Jensen and Paul Haynes, who helped finish the book.
Thank you, guys. This is Billy Jensen. He was a journalist friend of Michelle's, and Paul Haynes was Michelle's researcher, referred to in the book as the Kid.
The Kid.
This is the Kid.
Yeah, there he is.
So yeah, and I'm bringing them here because they live here, and a lot of these book tours I wasn't able to take them with me, and my function, as you will see, will be to talk about Michelle and to talk in very kind of subjective, quasi-poetic terms about what happened, and then go, and Billy and Paul, could you please explain? Like, they actually have technical facts and updates as to what is actually still going on with the case. So we're very, very lucky to have them here tonight. So thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. So, yeah.
It's very exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. Should we just get right to the updates? Just tell it. Did they catch him?
Well, okay, you were talking, when we did the event, we did an earlier event in L.A., that there was a possible lead. And by the way, before I get him started on this ends in frustration again, but there was a very strong possible lead that led from them looking at a fence he vaulted over, in which they discovered that the other side of I'll let Billy and Paul can take this over, yeah.
So, when you actually visit the crime scenes, you have a different perspective than you would have looking at them from like the bird's eye view on Google Maps. And one of the investigators in Sacramento had visited the scene of, I believe, the 28th rape. And he realized that the offender leaving the scene would have had a steep drop and likely wouldn't have been able to gauge the steepness of it in the dark because the lighting conditions weren't conducive to that. And, an injury would have likely resulted from the offender's escape from that scene. And incidentally, 3 days later, there was an individual who presented himself at the American River Hospital in Carmichael with a broken shoulder. And he claimed it was an on-the-job injury, and he provided a false name, provided a false social security number from multiple stolen identities. And once it became evident that the hospital staff was suspicious of this individual, he fled. And this was a lead that wasn't really followed up on until like 3 months ago. And it was determined that the hospital intake employee had since passed. So it's a dead end.
Yes, there's a lot of stuff like that of, we're following this thread and then you just hit a wall, and which she really, really recreates in the book, the sensation of these cops who, oh my God, this looks so good. And then you hit this wall, and then you have to recover from the disappointment of not only did that not pan out, but by pursuing that, I've given this killer another 2-3 month lead, yet a further head start because I just followed the wrong lead.
Yeah, and in a twisted way, that's the way we talked about this last time. As we talk about these suspects that we have, and we all have certain suspects that we like, and the suspect list is especially that was in Michelle's computer was 1,000 people. But there was ones that she liked, and that's how you refer to them. Do you like this guy? Does this guy look good? And it's almost like you're falling in love with this suspect. Yeah. When it doesn't pan out, it's your heart gets broken to a certain extent, and you go into a very dark place. And we've all been there with whether it's a lead that doesn't pan out in one of my other investigations, and Michelle certainly. I've had Michelle come and we were going to have drinks, and like the first thing she said was, "I solved it," and then it just didn't work out.
Yeah. Eventually you get jaded.
Eventually, but you get jaded. But she never once. That would only really last like a day, maybe a day for her. I think I never really. So I wasn't with her every day, but she was always just right back up there and been like, all right, because there's always going to be, and especially in this case, there was always another lead to follow. It wasn't like every dead end actually was not a dead end. It just turned around and then led to another path.
Yeah. I know I felt so frustrated in the book when it was like explaining someone that looked very, very good for the case, and then the DNA wouldn't, this simple little thing, and everything else on paper was 100% that was the person. And you start wanting to not believe DNA, which is insane.
Right.
But it's just, I can't imagine.
Can't we bring back alchemy and reading entrails and watching how birds fly? What's wrong with that? You said, again, that language of finding a suspect that it is the exact same language as an early crush where you're like, hey, I'm liking this guy. He's looking good. He's good. And then when a piece of evidence will come up that exonerates him, they will use phrases like, he blew it. He blew it. I was so into him, and he blew it. Yeah. Like, it was the same, he showed up wearing a MAGA hat. I was into him, and he blew it.
He said he asked somebody else to the prom, and he forgot.
Yeah, it was, he was right there. He blew it. So, that kind of, you have to get that emotionally involved. And yeah, I remember very specifically some very rough mornings for her where she'd be at her laptop crying because this has gone nowhere, or very, very bad late nights of a lot of brooding. But like you said, after a couple days, she would, okay, who's next? She would open the files again and let's go back into them. And it was, I don't know where she got that energy or where she got that fortitude to keep doing that, even though it was getting chipped away like that.
Well, it also seems like in reading it, because I went to college in Sacramento, and the way, you could so tell that she went there and spent time there.
Oh, yes, she did.
Those descriptions are so fucking laser accurate. The fact that she mentioned Day on the Green, being a teenager in the 70s in Sacramento meant you went to the river, you drank beer at the levee. What? Mm-hmm. You fucking went to Day on the Green in Oakland or whatever. Like all these things where at the time I was 7 in California, they were teenagers, but it was so concise. It was so insanely accurate where I think part of it seems to me, was the research was her passion. So getting back into it, as disappointed as she would get, that was almost the salve, is like, but now there's this file to go through.
Yeah, and you mentioned, that the actual physical going to the place and driving around and feeling the air and what it feels like in the summer versus what it feels like in the winter. Very early on True Crime Diary, there was a murder up in Jenner on the beach, and which a couple was on the beach. They were making out. A guy walked down and shot them with a rifle. So when you envision this thing in your mind of, oh yeah, he walked down to the beach with a rifle. But then she drove up to Jenner and went down to that beach. That beach was extremely rocky, very, very hard to get. She almost like fell and hurt herself getting down there. She goes, and I was not carrying a heavy hunting rifle. Then she went and checked out what the rifle was he would have used. It's insanely heavy. So it totally changed her perception of what the crime was about. Oh no, this wasn't a guy that randomly wandered down and shot people. This was a outdoorsy, planned, knew what he was. So I think that really stayed with her of let's always drive, walk, look at the crime scene, talk to the locals, find out, and find out from that time. I remember she would drive through Irvine and Goleta, and she would make iPod mixes of the songs that would have been on the radio in those years.
Oh my God.
And one time we were coming back from Santa Barbara, and she stopped and drove, and it was Dan Fogelberg and the Eagles, and just like and it made all those songs kind of sinister.
Yeah,
like,
they are.
Dan.
Fucking Hotel California is the scariest song of all time.
Yeah, Dan Fogelberg has some darkness in him that people do not talk about.
He was on so much coke.
Leader of the band is tired.
Yeah, he is tired. He very and it's hard to say.
Why
it's hard to say.
Is he so tired?
But she would get to that, and you realize everything contributed to what ended up happening. The movies that were there, the catchphrases that were in people's heads. She wanted to be totally absorbed in that time.
Well, and I think that work, it so shows in this book, because I think it's easy when you like true crime or you read it or you're kind of this like a participant. For me, it's so easy to sit back and be like, well, that's ridiculous. They didn't test that thing, or all that weird judgy shit, where when you actually go out and do the things that cops had to do, I mean, she was really actually walking the walk, which is the coolest.
We have a tool right now, especially as citizen detectives, if anybody has ever tried to look into their own cases, of using Google Maps and using Google Street View, and you can walk through. But the one thing that you don't get is depth. And that's what you wouldn't be able to get that when she was looking at the Jenner case. You wouldn't be able to get that when with the possible lead of the guy jumping and then hurting his shoulder. You have to be able to do that, and that's so important. When you go see scenes that you've only seen pictures of, and you're actually there, everything just really looks really small. Everything's small. Everything's a lot more condensed and closer together. But you really get that sense of depth, and it gives you a whole new perspective on what everything is about.
Yeah.
That's true. We went when we were in Boulder for a show. We went and drove, of course, by the Ramsey house, and it is tiny.
Yeah.
You don't realize how close everything is, and someone had to have heard something, and it's just.
If she were here, she knew every single thing about the JonBenet Ramsey case. She knew all the online slang. BDI, Burke did it.
Yeah.
She knew the slang. Pineapple was part of the slang. And I remember her saying. She said, that ransom note is the Citizen Kane of ransom notes. No ransom note is more than a page long. Like that should have put nothing but alarm bells up. People are like, yeah, they just wrote a long ransom note. No one does that. No one. Page 2. Yeah. Furthermore, they don't do that. Yeah, exactly.
Now that the body is 5 feet away from me, I start to realize. No.
I'm sent back to my youth in the Boy Scouts. I remember those days. No one does that. So there was all these. There were these books that she would. A book that she was really she would read over and over again was Robert Graysmith's Zodiac book, because it's a fascinating read, because it's a fascinating case, but it's also it's a version of I'll Be Gone in the Dark where he's not aware of how obsessed he is. Whereas in this book, I think Michelle is very, very aware of she is going to some weird areas here, and she even says that the same drive that makes this guy go and stalk people and murder people is what drives me and these cops to keep pursuing him no matter what. And she said the Zodiac book by Robert Graysmith is a fascinating book because it's a case study of the writer more than it is of the crime. But the writer doesn't realize he's writing it. He doesn't realize he's giving you an autobiographical case study of his unhingedness.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really cool.
That's the feeling that I had when I first saw that picture of the town hall meeting at the high school.
Oh, boy.
I looked at every fucking man's face in that picture. He's there, and the faces are so small. It was a town. For people, I'm sure you all know, but the people that don't know, they finally had a town hall meeting to get everybody together. At the town hall meeting, there was a man who said, "I can't believe this is happening. No man would let somebody come into their house." And then a couple months later, I believe, the East Area rapist hit that house and that family.
Came after him and his wife.
And they were victims. So they know for a fact he was at this town hall meeting.
What if it was a coincidence?
It could have been a coincidence.
It could have been. But
Have you ever been to Sacramento, though?
That's what's so crazy.
That's all we had to do then was town hall meetings.
Yeah.
Sacramento is LA with no show business. Just picture that. Just imagine that in your head. No, nothing exciting or glamorous happens.
Yeah. Okay, but what you're just saying there, that is, if you go to these certain towns, each town has a personality, and then it will help you to understand, like, oh, wait a minute, that I don't think that was a coincidence because of how that, it changes your view of the crimes, and it's, it's kind of fascinating that way. Yeah. I mean, when I was doing my reading at Powell's for this book, they told me, I'm sure they've told you this too, or maybe you'll be told this. When I did readings for my other books, I'm just kind of in the round talking. But when I was doing this book, they had me sitting against a wall because whenever there's readings for true crime books, there are plainclothes cops in the audience, and they photograph the crowd because in the past, whenever Ann Rule has done readings there, they would photograph the crowd way back in the day, and the Green River Killer would be at almost all of the readings. So
isn't this what we came for tonight? Right there.
Look around.
Exactly. But they will photograph the crowd, and I was like, "Are there guys here tonight?" They're like, "Well, don't worry about that." But there were but any true crime reading, they photograph the crowd at Powell's because the Pacific Northwest is Disneyland for serial killers. So they make sure. So when your book comes out and you go on tour, take a look at your crowd at Powell's because who knows?
It's going to be all these girls with awesome hair and dresses, and then some guys.
Yeah, just a lot of
Ford guys with their arms crossed. Hi.
So yeah, that kind of eeriness is, I hate to bring up Joan Didion, but there is that.
You have to.
There's that thread of darkness in the suburbs, and God damn it, it's there. The reason it's a cliche is because it's fucking true.
Well, and it's in my experience, it's never been truer than the suburbs of Sacramento because Sacramento it just goes on and on and on. You can get in your car and drive for 4 hours and still be in Sacramento. It's like a fucking science fiction show on TNT that you don't want to watch. And also, when you get out into those Carmichael-y suburbs, those houses, you don't know one house from the next. It's probably slightly different now, but it just had that was part of the feel, right? Is like you're going out away from your job, away from the city to escape.
I think that's what's so interesting about this case is like, we all know that there's something in the places that he picked that tell who he is, because where I'm from, Irvine, randomly, where a couple of the cases or the attacks happened and murders, and it's the same fucking thing. And I think she described it, and I almost started crying as like, it's just a 3 shades of beige in this city, and it totally is. And these like boring ranch style houses and one story, and it's just there are these places that are supposed to feel safe and contained, and he brought this insane, crazy, scary nightmare to it, almost on purpose, to scare everyone.
I think on purpose.
Yeah. Well, what was the? Hang on.
Sure.
That was me bringing the nightmare was incidental to me. I just wanted to have something to eat, and then
I just love to stack plates.
They were just mentioning what do you that idea that. What was there something about these houses or this landscape that pulled that out of him that made has that ever been thought of? Or obviously,
I think definitely. I mean, Paul can speak to there's 2 main areas where we really focused on in part 3, which is where we think this thing can be solved, and that's DNA and particularly familial DNA. We think the answer is there. It's in a database someplace, and it's just a couple clicks away. It's just a matter of whether we can get to it or not. And then there's geographic profiling. And, the idea of what this guy wasn't, and Michelle believed this as well, this wasn't about sex for this guy. This was about power, and it was about taking somebody that is in their most comfortable state, their most safest state, which is they probably moved out of the city, and they're in the suburbs, and they're in their house, and they're in a bed next to their man who's protecting them with a loaded gun in the house, but meanwhile they don't know that he had snuck in and undid the gun and did all this other stuff. You can't get more evil and diabolical than that. And I think a lot of that did have to do with the power of it, is that you think you're safe, you're not safe. I'm going to come in here and show you what real terror is like. And a lot of that had to do with the geography, right?
Yeah, I think, reading about the serial offenders, you as the reader can just assure yourself, well, I've never been in that position, and that would never happen to me. With this case, these people are targeted in their own homes, in their beds at night. You can't avoid being in that situation. I think that's what makes this case so terrifying.
And I can't tell you how many, every other tweet is about, everybody's loving the book, which is amazing, but then every other tweet is, I just had to check the windows, I had to check the doors, I had to check the locks, and I swear lock sales have definitely gone up, or window sales and things.
My wife was reading this, and she's like, we are going to go over the alarm system.
Yeah.
And we're going to redo the codes. We're going to change it. Like, it makes you, because these people had these state-of-the-art defenses. But, okay, now you just let slip something there that is also touched on in the book. And also you guys, on past episodes, you've also caught yourselves doing this, which I find fascinating. When you really get into these cases and really get into these killers, there is a part of you that will unwillingly kind of go, and that was really diabolical and brilliant. And then you got to go, but he's a piece of shit. Like, and Michelle talks about that a lot in the book. These cops, they will start talking about him, and she describes it as it's the sensation of you find yourself talking way too long about an ex to your new boyfriend or girlfriend, and then you go, but fuck him. Don't think because they look at you like, I think you're still in, So there's that moment of but to catch him, you have to acknowledge that was a very brilliant thing. Like, have you ever done that as well? Like talking, jeez, oh god, that was
not tonight. Well, I think that to speak to that part, and you and I actually talked about this because it was when Michelle had told you this piece, and so it was before a show at Largo. It was like we're standing backstage, and you're like, oh, I'd tell you this thing about how he used to go into the house early and then hide stuff, and I'll tell you after. And then walked away where I was like, you can't do that. Yeah. What's happening? But basically the person who would, what kind of person would be able to stake out a house for months and months, revisit it, break into it when the family's not there, hide things, hide weapons, or all of those things where it's levels of, again, like, you don't want to use the word dedication. You don't want to use respectful words,
yes.
But at the same time, it's not the average, like, somebody that's
and
killed
Michelle
people.
said this guy wasn't a genius. He just practiced a lot. Mm-hmm. And he, it's like, Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hours of practice to get to an expert.
I knew we'd drag Gladwell into this.
Which I know.
Ladies and gentlemen, Malcolm Gladwell.
But that's what this guy did was he just constantly, he probably went out every night. He didn't attack every night, but he really was doing an early version of parkour, jumping around and doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
The thing of making dogs know him.
Oh God.
Fuck, man, come on. Yeah.
Giving him treats, calming him down.
So when you're reading a book, and that's one of the reasons why this book has resonated so much, is that when you're reading, the most famous serial killer in history is Jack the Ripper. When you're reading Jack the Ripper, there is such a detachment, not only because it happened a long time ago, but it's like, well, I'm not a streetwalker. It's never going to happen to me. Same thing
Streetwalker.
Same thing with Arthur Shawcross. Same thing with Joel Rifkin. You read those and you go, oh, that's not going to happen to me.
I'm not a Cockney
or even Son of Sam. It's like, oh, I don't make out with people on lovers' lanes. That's okay, but everybody
Speak for
sleeps.
yourself.
Everybody sleeps in their house.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why this resonates with everybody.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just remembered the one where it's the teenage girl who hears something outside her window, and because they were talking about how pale he was I think it's the earlier Visalia, that guy, the ransacker. Mm-hmm. part, and a girl hears the noise outside her window and then looks down and sees like a moon-looking thing, and then realizes it's a face looking up at her in the bushes. And then the way Michelle describes it is he skitters away like a lizard or something like that, where I was just like, I'm very upset right now. Like, it's a person who is basically dedicating his life to being as upsetting and evil and horrifying as possible. Explain that to me.
Well, you're right. Even if he's not killing someone, it's almost like he's designed his life around, even if I'm seen, I want it to be unsettling, and I want to haunt people and shake up any feeling of safety or normalcy. I want to be something in someone's field of vision that then they can never look at the world completely the same way again. That's what it's like, because it feels like someone going, I cannot make my mark any other way, so I'll do it through horror. Mm-hmm. I'll just do it through sheer horror.
Do you guys have a theory about what his job was? Because I got really convinced about the fact that he was in the military or special forces when there was the special forces guy. It's because in the book it said that. So I was like, me too. This is my theory. But it was the thing of the patience, the like how somebody could sit inside bushes for 6 hours and just wait, that it's a special training. Do you agree with that?
Well, I mean, he was generally described as having had like shoulder-length hair, so he wouldn't have been active military at that time. He may have been in the military at some point or a military enthusiast. But during that period, I mean, there's been a lot of speculation about his occupation. It's like, medical, construction, painting, realty. Any theory's game. But
is there anything you like, though?
No. They all kind of cancel each other out for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
really.
I mean, we try to take a look at. There's so many clues that are out there, and there are some that we know are definitely his, and then there are some that we're not sure of, like say the homework, the General Custer homework. So
homework.
Yeah. So or the map, the hand-drawn map. So we don't know if those are his or not. I tend not to focus on those just because you can really go down some rabbit holes, which Michelle's certainly gone down. I mean, I've looked at so many different maps trying to match up that hand-drawn map to different locations and neighborhoods. But we know that there are certain things like the paint flecks or whatever that he left behind, and the idea that he did know a lot about these neighborhoods. I don't think he was military. I would veer more towards somebody who maybe wanted to be military at some point, security guard-ish. Michelle would always say, always look to the handyman.
Yep, always look at the handyman.
She basically ruined True Detective by episode 3.
That's true. That's true. It's the handyman. The handyman.
Yeah, I'm good. Turn it off. And, I think that's sort of where I'm going, is more along those lines. Somebody that maybe wanted to be in the military or police but couldn't quite get it.
And aside from the DNA, the paint flecks have been really the only forensic evidence that's been of any value, and it's not been linked to any particular industry or company. So ultimately it's been useless. In terms of like what he's done for a living, like Paul Holes, who's the investigator in Contra Costa, is convinced that he worked in like landscape architecture or construction. Some of the other investigators feel he would be somebody of like, lower class, sort of a marginal person. But if that were the case, I think he would have stood out more in the neighborhoods that he prowled, and, he didn't. Descriptions of suspicious people are just kind of like guys that were there, who are like 5'9", dressed in windbreakers, very average-looking people. So, I don't know, whoever he was, he blended in these kind of upper middle-class neighborhoods.
And of the sketches, we've gone through the yearbooks of like the Rancho yearbooks and everything, and everybody had that haircut, that sort of feathered back haircut. Yeah. You're looking at him going, that's him.
Except people in the military.
Except people in the military, yeah. But, so
Lee Majors.
And that particular, we get a lot of people sending photos of their fathers or stepdads and say, hey, this is my stepdad, and look at the picture of him here. I bet he was the one. Or a lot of those, the pictures, them zooming in on pictures from that town hall meeting and saying, look at that, he was there, and things.
You get a lot of tips with people doing like side-by-sides, and that's a good way to filter out like the worthless ones, because the sketches are really just, I don't know, I don't think even the more reliable composites from this case are a very limited value. I mean, there's somebody's interpretation of somebody's description.
Well, and also,
of somebody wearing a mask for the most part.
and the way they don't compare to each other.
Right.
That drives me crazy. Is I always look at what is the 3 or 4 that they usually put up together, and it's like these are fucking 3 different dudes. Like
Right.
their features, the part of the hair. There's one guy that has like an extremely side part, and then the other guy has full on Sean Cassidy hair.
Yeah.
It's just.
You said you went to high school in Sacramento or college?
Well, I flunked out of college in Sacramento. That's how I like to say it.
But were there traces of this crime? Did people ever talk about it? Was it still in the air while you're there, or
No.
they'd moved
just
on?
the bad vibes.
Okay. Well, that's just Sacramento, though.
Yeah, exactly. That was just
That's how in
that
art
was
is,
the
my friend.
asphalt burning off in the 197 degree weather. No, but I never heard anybody talk about that. But in reading this book, there's that one part where the East Area rapist was operating, and there was 3 other rapists that were also operating at the same
The
time.
early bird rapist, the early morning rapist, the woolly rapist. The 70s were like a breeding ground for serial offenders.
Yeah.
Ugh. It was not. I remember one time Michelle tweeted, "Hey, was your name Gary? And did you drive a van in the '70s? You weren't alone." Because she was going through all these files. It was just like there's a guy named Gary in a van. Like that's the symbol of '70s should be a guy named Gary with a van.
Yeah.
That's the '70s in California.
Yeah.
But you moved to Irvine so did you have a weird?
Well,
You said some thing.
Well, I think that everyone's, and I've seen a lot of tweets of like, is everyone pretty sure their like weird older coworker is the Golden State Killer? Yes, okay, because I'm doing that too with like.
I've gotten a lot of the stepfather Facebook messages.
Yeah.
My stepfather was a piece of shit, so I'm pretty sure he was. I'm like, dude, I feel bad for you. I doubt he was a multiple murderer.
But fingers crossed.
Well, here's how I know my dad wasn't it. Hopefully, so we moved to Irvine. The first attack and murder happened in Irvine in '81, which is when we moved there, and then the other one was in '86. And I asked my parents about it, and my mom was just like, "Whatever." And so '86 was when my parents divorced, so we were like solo in my mom's house, which is like, and you were cool with that? Because I know we didn't lock the doors at night. But my dad, I asked him, do you remember that? And he's like, yeah, I remember that when in '86 when that happened. It was really hard to get a date at the time. Because women were like, wouldn't go home with you. And I was like, cool, Dad.
Wow.
Thanks.
On top of all the other awful things he did, he made the single scene in Irvine a nightmare.
Let's not forget the way he impacted romance.
Let's all pour out a little for the fern bars where nothing really happened.
Could not wear that members only jacket.
Yeah, but yeah, they were, and I love the part of the book where she talks about how DNA and familiar ancestral DNA, makes Tom Hanks would be a suspect based on the descriptions. And then she said the filming schedule of Bosom Buddies. That alone is what. Although I remember, I'm going to drop a name here, but we had dinner. She and I had dinner with Steve Martin. About just as she was beginning work in the book, and she was talking about writing it, and then this is before she wrote that, but she said, oh, by the way, based on ancestral DNA, like Tom Hanks could be a suspect, but of course the shooting schedule of Bosom Buddies exonerates him, and then Steve went, does it? Which I thought was so brilliant.
It would be an amazing revel.
It would be. Come on. That's the...
It'd be fun. Mm-hmm. It'd be fun.
Should we open it up for questions? Or what? Did you guys have any other questions? Or...
Who did it?
Could someone just come forward?
One of the great things about this book being so successful is that somebody that I made a decision very early on in my career not to do any solved murders. I only do unsolved crimes for 15 years. That's 15 years of writing stories with no endings. Nobody really ever wants to hear those. I mean, eventually they're okay for like a 5,000 word story in a magazine or something. But as far as a book or a TV show, no, they want the ending. And for this nobody has really been upset with, hey, there's no ending on this thing. I think everybody really wants to be a part of it. And I think it's going to be solved within the next 5 years. I do.
Well, and I think maybe part of that also has to do with the progression of the digital age, social media, and podcasting. People who love true crime, they want to solve it. So there is a part of it where, I mean, I read that book and then I'm just like, if I could just connect Visalia. And, it's that feeling where since the answer is out there, that there's the possibility, I think there is an engagement. It's like
Absolutely. No, we've definitely gone into nobody wants to be a spectator anymore in true crime. Everybody wants to be a participant. And the ultimate participant would be to solve a murder. Even more than that, the grand slam home run would be to solve this one.
I think, though, also, like, on a level of, I mean, I know I'm not going to solve this one. I'm good.
Come on. You don't know?
I kind of understand this, like, when she's writing about, when she's talking about, late at night writing in her daughter's room and all, the obsession. I think that us as true crime and, obsessives understand just wanting to know more and know more. And when it's an unsolved crime, there's just an infinite amount of information to know and to connect. And it's just fulfilling in your crazy brain, in your anxiety riddled brain, that you can, that together we can all figure this out and that we can all know. Yeah. And it's just really
But I think that's
fulfilling.
It's true.
Yeah.
It is actually true.
Yeah. Before we open it up for questions, are any new developments or updates you can share or want to? If you don't want to, that's cool. But
there's a couple things that had come out since we shipped the book. One of them was that he had stolen China. A very particular brand of China, and apparently people used to put China in like these plastic bags. Like
I remember my mom would do that. I remember that those zipper things.
He would take them, and he actually took all the China. We had not known that before, so they had put that out. That's a new clue. We've done our own thing where one of the techniques that I do, I use social media to help police departments around the country solve stuff. And I saw we're looking for people that were of that age, that were in Sacramento, that aren't there anymore, that are on the East Coast or on, we've gotten some people. And a lot of times when you put stuff out there, like when you said that people are writing to you saying my stepdad did it, you can't just be, no, you're an idiot. You have to be, you're almost like a counselor and be like, oh wow, that's really horrible.
Well, a lot of times there's abuse and stuff. You send that to me. I cannot deal with this. Yeah.
And but we got one woman who said that she had encountered him, and she wasn't. I don't think she was lying. I think she definitely was telling the truth. Whether it was him or not is another matter. But that is something that we took her name. We gave it off to I interviewed her, and then we gave it off to one of the detectives. That could lead to something, because there could be a police report that noticed a car, and then they could trace the car or something like that. That was not in any of Michelle's 3,500 documents. We did not have that woman's name. So that was something that she did do a police report, but it wasn't in any of our stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that could have fallen through the cracks. That's one of them that, fingers crossed, could lead to something.
And, with an offender like this, the first rape is probably not his first rape. It's probably not his first offense. I mean, these offenders have years of paraphilic activity like prowling and burglaries. And, the Ransacker series was the obvious candidate, I think, as a starting point. But I just don't feel it's the same offender. I think there are too many discrepancies in terms of behavior and physical description. And Ken Clark in Sacramento has identified 2 burglary series in Rancho Cordova, which is where the series formally began. Burglary series dating back to 1972 that feel very much like this offender, more so than the Ransacker series. So, that suggests some origin in that area, which, I think geography for me is one of the big, clues. And together with like the forensics, the genealogy, I think geography is one of like the very few paths to solving the case.
I was reading in the Ransacker part, because of course I was like, the Ransacker is the East Area Rapist, is the Golden State Killer, but in the part where they were describing his body, then I started this fantasy of he left Visalia knowing like the cops were hot on his tail, and then started doing like a Biggest Loser style. I am going to change my physical appearance, tan up,
right.
You know what I mean, get a little sun, and start doing parkour style exercises. You know what I mean? Like the idea of that, I was like, well, that's a possibility. Yes, maybe he didn't match directly, but what if he did try to change himself?
Well, Well, Holmes has argued that they're just two fundamentally different body types. Like one's an endomorph, one's an ectomorph. But also, the ransacker, when confronted, behaved in a very conspicuous way, consistently. The ear, when confronted, just kind of was like, "Hey, how's it going?" and would leave the area. Wouldn't, the ransacker was almost like bizarre in his behavior.
The screaming and the...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God.
Don't hurt me!
Yeah.
How creepy.
With America's #1 meal kit, HelloFresh, you'll get easy, seasonal recipes and pre-measured ingredients delivered right to your door. All you have to do is cook and enjoy. HelloFresh makes cooking delicious meals at home a reality. From step-by-step recipes to pre-measured ingredients, you'll have everything you need to get a wow-worthy dinner on the table in about 30 minutes. Say goodbye to endless grocery store trips and takeout. HelloFresh has you covered. There's something for everyone, from family recipes to calorie smart and vegetarian, and fun menu series like Hall of Fame and craft burgers. HelloFresh has more 5-star recipes than any other meal kit, so you'll know you're getting something incredible. HelloFresh is flexible and it fits your lifestyle. Easily change your delivery days, food preferences, and skip a week whenever you need. Break out of your dinner rut and make deliciousness part of every week with HelloFresh. I love that even though HelloFresh is super easy and they make it really basic and straightforward, you still feel like you're cooking this incredible home cooked dinner, and that makes me feel good about myself. And that instead of just ordering takeout, I'm actually making something and preparing something at home, and it feels good. So for $80 off your first month of HelloFresh, go to HelloFresh.com/murder80 and enter murder80. It's like receiving 8 meals for free only at HelloFresh.com/murder80, promo code murder80. Go buy.
Well, let's open it up for questions for a little bit out there. I'll let you guys moderate.
Yeah. Yes. Hi.
Hi. What are your thoughts on the accomplice theory? Do you think that you have one?
Is there an accomplice theory?
There's no evidence across 55 crimes. There's no actual physical evidence of an accomplice. He would pretend there was, but there's no evidence to substantiate that there was, so I don't feel he had one.
Oh, it's like a classic, I've called the cops, kind of, they're coming, but there's no one really there.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
He would talk to, and then he would whisper back, and...
Are you maybe referencing?
Ventriloquism.
Was it the the janitor at the school that saw the 2 guys in the matching windbreakers? Is that what you mean?
No.
Talking about when the victims were blindfolded, would overhear him speaking to someone, he was in the van, and it sounded like there was somebody there with him, but they didn't know if that was just a tap to throw them off.
Yeah, in the first attack, the victim heard him whispering to someone, and in that instance, he intimated that he was there with his girlfriend, but I think it was just a charade. There was no evidence that he had anyone with him.
He was doing different voices. We know he was doing the clenched teeth voice, kill, but he was also doing other ones too. I think that was just a ruse.
He would pretend to be a junkie. He would pretend to be, mentally ill. He would adopt Mexican accents and German accents, and he was
but now I have to argue because
out.
Didn't the ransacker do that when that cop first stopped him and he did the Okie accent?
Well, I don't know that he was. I think he was consistently described as having had that accent,
Oh.
but he did. He did pretend to have an accomplice on numerous occasions.
Maybe
so.
he was an actor.
Yeah.
Okay, the paint is from
Tom
painting
Hanks.
his play.
Oh my God.
We're back to Hanks.
Oh my God, we're back to Hanks.
It all comes back.
I say we look at everyone who didn't get SNL when they were because he had 3 characters right there.
Yeah, that's right.
So.
Thanks. I was really struck by the moment when Michelle's voice in the book ends almost in mid-paragraph, and then it was very kind of moving to move on to the next chapter and have you guys picking the story up. Can you talk a bit about the professional relationship that you developed with her?
I was working with Michelle prior to the book being sold, so we had corresponded since I think 2011. And we were sort of investigative partners. I mean, she would share leads with me, I would share leads with her, and I saw her maybe 3 or 4 times a month. Her death was shocking to me. She wasn't ill. It wasn't something. It was the farthest thing from my mind. So it was very difficult for me to process. And I think that there was sort of a blueprint in terms of how she wanted the book structured. But it was just, everything was just interrupted. She left uninterrupted work, interrupted research, and so I think it was a challenge to sort through that. And also,
that was the first thing I thought of. I knew everybody else would be thinking of, obviously, think of Patton and think of Alice. the first thing I thought of, this fucking guy won. And then I thought, fuck this guy. And I was like, I'm going to do everything I can, no matter what, I'm going to do everything I can to get this out, because I'd want somebody to do that for there's two reasons. One, I'd want somebody to do that for me if I was doing it. And two, I constantly was egging her on to finish the book because we had other projects that we wanted to do. We were doing a podcast called the Shadow Pulp Radio Hour, which was like this thing that we would get one call per podcast, and it was from Frank from Burbank, and Frank from Burbank actually was Patton from Los Feliz. Thank you for that. But and then we did a panel at South by Southwest called Solving Murders with Social Media, and it was just we had some other projects that we really wanted to do, but she stopped everything and said, I want to focus on this. And we would go to lunch once a month, and then she would talk about the case, and I would talk about my cases and everything. But it was good to have something to do. We had all this stuff there, and it was like, all right, well, what do we do with this, and how do we structure it? And the idea that she didn't write about every crime. She wasn't ever going to write about every crime. I mean, that's a lot. It's 49 rapes, it's 12 murders at least. But we weren't going to write in her voice. That couldn't happen because she's such a damn good writer. And she's such an intimidating writer, too, because I didn't write it all myself while we were working on it. Then when I went back to write, every sentence I write, I look at it, and when I look at it again, I'm like, damn, that's not good enough. And then I go back and I try to make it good enough, just because I just worked on a book when this woman was just so good at two things that I thought I used to be a good combination of, which was a good writer and a good researcher. And she was, honestly, I think she was the best one in true crime.
And the success of the book is bittersweet in her absence. And once this offender is identified, I mean, that excitement will be kind of tempered by the fact that Michelle never learned his identity.
Yeah, it was really terrifying to when she died, because grief feels like terror, it feels like fear, but then also knowing that this was this thing that she was so obsessed with and so focused on, and so on top of the grief was going to be this. So I didn't have that determined moment that you had. I had the just reaching out to everyone I could, her publisher, these guys, and just begging, could somebody help me finish this book? And I decided very early on when I read, because she would have me read early chapters, that I knew immediately, there's no way we can pick up the writing and finish it. So it ends where it ends, because if we had picked it up, you would have seen very clearly, that's where Michelle stopped writing, and that's where these guys. See if you can figure out where Clapton stopped playing, and the kid with a day of ukulele training. But I think I can pick out the exact note. So and there's also, it was very bittersweet for me, because having the book done is another thing where it's another part of her that's kind of gone, like in a very sick way. Not having the book done and us working on it meant she was still here, and having that and then if he is caught, that'll be very bittersweet. She'll never, but that'll be another part of her gone. And so there's that, there was a lot of push-pull for me. But then
finding that the letter to the old man, which is the coda at the end of the book, it was almost like, holy shit, this is so perfect that she's actually taught, all this stuff is done, and she's gone, and she's really speaking from another place.
It was a way to sort of close an interrupted arc.
It was so ridiculous. Then I saw that. It was almost prescient.
Yeah, we were so happy that we found that. And if you want to, HarperCollins put out a 3-episode podcast about the book. You can download it anywhere you get podcasts. But her, there are recordings and interviews with her where she's talking about the process of writing the book and investigating the crime. You can hear her voice and how she, would try to puzzle. I mean, she was a very, very unique personality. And so if you want to hear her voice for real, it's on that 3-episode podcast that's out there. But it is there's, again, to quote James Ellroy, there's no such thing as closure. There's just no closure.
Well, I remember when you sent me the Oak Park chapter.
Yes.
And I was really scared to read it, because it's that thing of one of your friends where they're like, do you want to read my script? And you're like, sure. Because it could, you know what I mean? Like,
no, I get it. Yeah.
You don't want it to be you. And anyway, I read it, and I just couldn't stop sobbing when it was over, because it was that amazing thing of someone is gone, but they have left this amazing body of work that actually, like, I went into her life. I went into her teenage bedroom, and with her as the guide, couldn't stop thinking about what, like her mom reading that chapter. And everything about that was just so fucking magnificent that it was just like, thank God. And then I remember texting you and being like, what's going to happen with the book? And I wanted to say, like, do you want me to help you? But I really did not want to say that at all. And you texted back like, we've got these great guys. And I was like, great. Perfect. Awesome.
I don't want to be, I didn't want to be involved. I knew that I couldn't because it was hard enough for me just to read her writing. So thank God you guys stepped up.
When we were putting it together, we would send Patton stuff, and we knew Patton needed time. So Patton would, there were a couple months when you, especially getting through the summer.
I
couldn't do anything over the summer because Alice was out of school and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But I couldn't sit down and read it because I would read a couple of pages and I would lose my shit, and because her voice was right there. She was right there. Like I wanted to. I remember one time I was visiting my parents, this back in Virginia, down in the basement in my dad's office, and I'm reading, and I wanted to go upstairs. There was a second where I wanted to go upstairs and tell her that one paragraph was so, because in my mind she's just right up there because her voice is right there, and I just stopped myself, and then it hit me all over again. Like so, it just it was a very, very hard, difficult process.
But also, it's like there is this living document. There's something very alive about this book, and very, sometimes when you're writing, you want to be fancy. You want to put something on and be like, everyone's going to love this great idea. And it actually distances you. She is right fucking there on that page. So it's like, there is a magic to, there's a lot of people that talk about writing books all the time. The fact that there is so much, it's such an amazing book, and it does exist. Like, it's not the thing she wanted to get done.
Right.
That's kind of incredible too.
Yeah, it's amazing. So.
My deepest condolences about Michelle. She seems like such a kindred spirit in a true crime all my life. But I have a question about that infamous town hall meeting where the guys, real braggadocio about how he would protect his wife. Do we know for sure that famous photo is from that particular?
It's not.
Okay.
In that town hall.
What? All the work I did.
No. Believe me, we've stopped telling people even that's not. Yeah, because it's just everybody did all that work.
That town hall in which that gentleman spoke up actually took place before the stereo rapist began attacking couples. So he wouldn't have actually said, "I would protect my wife." He was just getting into it with the cops, and that town hall took place before the media blackout was lifted. So,
oh my God,
so that was in, I think, November of '76, and that couple was attacked, I think, in May of '77. So it was some months later.
So do you guys think it was a coincidence?
Michelle believed it may have been.
Yeah. That's such a bummer.
I'm sorry, but I'm only going off when she first found out that information and told me she thought it was specifically, but she didn't have all the details at the time. Yeah. So that's the story she told me, and I was like, "Oh my God!"
Yes.
Such a good story.
It's a great story.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, then you get out a magnifying glass and you start looking, and if it comes, you're looking for the shooter on the grassy knoll.
You're looking at pixels
things
now.
Get mistold, and like you have this apocryphal version of the story, and it's only when you sort of see the files that you realize that that was actually another blind alley.
It's what these guys say: always check the files when you can. Check the files. It's one of the catchphrases of the podcast.
It's what I always say, which was the murderer was at that exact picture, and I know it.
He's
he
in
took
there.
the picture for everybody, which was nice.
So just so I understand, you guys did the research, but is the writing all Michelle's?
All Michelle. They wrote a section in the back, the third section, and it says by Billy Jensen and Paul Haynes, where they talk about geographic profiling and DNA. And then I wrote a very brief afterward says by me, but the book is all her writing. We didn't add and there's even this is from notes that she, but it's not us. Our fingerprints are not on any of this stuff. It's her writing.
Sort of like, when they reconstruct an old silent movie and they don't have all the footage and they use stills. It's the same principle.
Yeah. So there were parts in there where there was a part that was missing that we would go into we would go into her emails, and even her emails were written in a way that are not just like the regular schlub writes an email like you and I do. They're written in a way that were really great. And, there was like, oh, we can put that over here, and it was very much like that. But she wasn't writing it linearly; she was very much writing it in these chapters, and it was a matter of how are we going to put the chapters together to make it cohesive, and then filling in those blanks with what she had, and she certainly had a lot because we had access to her hard drive.
Have you sold movie rights?
That we're not really talking about that right now. There's a lot of stuff that's up in the air, but I don't really. We're now it's in a stage where I can't really talk about it. So yeah, yes.
I want to ask you. We go back to what you're saying about Zodiac, the Zodiac book, and James Elroy. It's like,
right.
How did Michelle and how do you two avoid like turning into Jake Gyllenhaal and Zodiac? Were you giving up your whole life to this and getting pulled into that obsession that happens with so many detectives? It happens to a lot of people at these times.
Well, I mean, you approach it because you are a professional. You've been doing this professionally, so you do keep that distance for it. I mean, I think with Michelle, unfortunately, not to sound morbid, I don't think she successfully avoided being completely pulled in by this in the very end. There was a lot of sleeplessness and insomnia, and I mean, it didn't make her. She was still very much a mom and a wife and a friend, but this. The further she got into this, it was clear that she had a real shot at solving this, and that can be some fatal bait. That can really pull you into some depths that you can't get yourself back out of.
Yeah, and with me, it's really a numbers game. There's 15,000 murders in America, 5,000 go unsolved, which is an insane number when you think about it. So that means there's 215,000 murders that are unsolved since 1980. I can't get obsessed with just one, so I'm constantly working. I'm working 20 or 25 right now, and even that's just such a small drop in the bucket.
I was just surrender to my obsessions. I'm not a very pragmatic person,
That's a very graceful way to put that. Wow.
You want to do one more question?
One more?
Yeah.
Okay. Right there.
You mentioned social media crime solving. There was a TV show recently that got canceled, Wisdom of the Crowd, but I'm just wondering, is there any such platform? Is there coming?
No, there definitely is. I work a lot, and I've written a lot of stories about that, about regular people trying to solve crimes. There's a site called Web Sleuths, which some of you might know, that you can go on, and people are discussing crimes. You can go on, certainly Facebook. A lot of people will discuss certain crimes on Facebook groups. The biggest thing that you have to, and also Reddit, the biggest thing you have to do is not name names. If you don't name names, then you're okay. It's when you start naming names or saying it's the what about this guy syndrome, where you go, what about this guy? And then you have a link to a Facebook profile. That's where you get into trouble. So I really do think, and I'm a big proponent of crowd solving, and I think that it can work as long as it's done the right way, and one of that is just making sure that you don't name names.
Hey, can I ask one question before we end this? So I happened to be going up the street to the movie, stopped in, saw the book in the window, grabbed it, haven't read it yet, and I'm a little frightened about this. This type of genre is not really something I'm attracted to, and I'm a little afraid to read it because I don't want to be stay awake at night.
Read it during the day at a coffee shop.
Yeah, read it in the day. Don't read it at night. And I'm not saying that. That's not cheap hyperbole. If that's how you feel, I would. And I've had friends who've written me that said I had to stop reading it and I waited till the daytime. Especially the audiobook, I've had friends make the mistake of listening to it alone at night. That is a huge mistake.
That's me.
Read it when you're out hiking in the sunshine with friends and dogs around. But yeah, read it in the daytime.
To me, that's almost
I would.
creepier.
Yeah.
When I listen to it and doing it during the day and hiking, and it makes everything surreal. It's the same thing of listening to what was playing on the radio when you're driving through it's the same. It makes everything feel like a David Lynch movie.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Everything is a David Lynch.
It is.
It kind of is.
It really is.
Well, that's where we're living. We're living in a badly written David Lynch movie right now. We're not even one of the good ones. We're in Inland Empire.
No. Come on.
I'm sorry.
Let's not get negative.
Don't name names.
Yeah, don't name names.
I want to say, as a fangirl, a longtime fangirl of Michelle, how much you guys finishing this book, all three of you. And I know it's hard because it's, an ending. It's such a lovely thing to have. It's on my nightstand. It's in my phone, and I'm gonna read it and reread it constantly, and it means a lot that you guys finished it. And I know it's hard, but
They finished it.
Yeah,
Thank
great
Dylan
job, you guys.
Paul.
Amazing. Amazing. I think that's it.
And thank you, Georgia Hardstark and Karen Kilgariff from My Favorite Murder. I'm telling you, there are how many murderinos are here tonight?
Wow.
They are. Wow. Sorry, but the entire Portland crowd were murderinos. It was all murderinos. It's crazy.
Let's give one more round of applause for our My Favorite Murder, Patton, Billion, and Paul for finishing this book. It was a pleasure to have you guys.